Hooah! It's Friday. Welcome to Frontline, 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. We begin some breaking news tonight from Washington, D.C., where a federal judge has ruled that President Trump's name must be removed from the newly named Trump Kennedy Center, saying the board overstepped its bounds by renaming the facility, blah, blah, blah. The center was scheduled to close later this year for renovation, but that order has actually halted the closure as well. Also, you remember this guy, Ian Roberts, the former superintendent of the Des Moines School District and illegally in the U.S. for over 20 years? Yeah. Well, he was finally sentenced to 2 years in federal prison for unlawfully possessing a firearm and falsely claiming citizenship. Roberts received 8 months credit for the time served. He'll be deported after serving the rest of his sentence. And just days after winning a NASA contract potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars, Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin suffered that setback when a rocket exploded on the launch pad, igniting a massive fireball that was seen like 100 miles away. And I can laugh at this because nobody was injured, but who doesn't love a good explosion? But first, here's a bright idea. How about we stop pretending that these anti-ICE rioters are actually innocent protesters? Let's do this. All right, my man Brandon Gill never disappoints. From Texas, finally taking aim at the funding for these non-government organizations, NGOs. They call them that because technically they are non-governmental organizations, but a whopping ton of them get a ton of money from, as we saw in recent crackdowns on grants, the government. And they can't sustain themselves or their operations without government funding, which I think kind of technically makes them government agencies. And Scott Bessent laid out the new criteria for those groups.
The IRS is now giving guidance on the Form 990, which nonprofits they have to file. And we are going to encourage or demand that nonprofits know their grant recipients. So if a grant recipient is violent, if they are suppressing people's rights, then you are responsible for that.
Folks, you know I have been yelling about this since I was in the administration under Trump 1. I was in charge of CNCS, the Corporation for National Community Service, which was a major granting arm of the federal government to these nonprofits. I remember as part of my onboarding there, I wanted to go around and see some of these nonprofits and visit with the ones that were getting like millions. And I mean, we were spending like $1 billion a year out the door just giving them to these 501c3s. This was in 2018. And it took me a few weeks to realize that I was, carefully being directed to only go look at certain ones, and other ones were being hidden from me. Why? Well, because they were getting millions of dollars to give aid and provide legal defense to illegal immigrants, which Donald Trump expressly did not want to happen. I found them, I shut down a lot of those grants, and all hell broke loose. And Brandon Gill has picked up this torch, saying this: you do not have the right to run an organization that takes tax dollars that engages in illegal activity or engages in domestic unrest or engages in oftentimes political activity, whether it's nonprofits or other sorts of entities that are taking government money. Weird. Let me explain how this works, and maybe at least some rational people left on the left will understand why I am so against illegal immigration. The government, they confiscate your money at gunpoint under the penalty of prison. We call this taxation, for which you have no option and you must fork over your money. They take a bunch of this money and then they grant it back out, like I was telling you, to these non-government organizations. Now, keep in mind, the government has certain restrictions on what they can spend their money on and how it can be spent. But if they give it to one of these NGOs, there's basically zero accountability once it leaves the government's coffers. That private nonprofit, that, by the way, is not paying taxes because their organization is tax exempt, just does whatever they want with this stuff. And as I already explained, a lot of those NGOs are aiding illegal immigrants. Those NGOs are helping those illegals apply for government programs, maybe some housing subsidies or some welfare programs that they say doesn't happen, but it always happens. They're helping illegals basically consume more of our tax revenue. They're also replacing low-skilled labor that would normally go to entry-level American jobs, at which point they often send a lot of the money they make back to their home country. So it's not even being spent in our economy. And if you remember, we've showed you this before, foreign-born workers are outpacing American-born workers in our job force. They account for more than half of the U.S. labor force growth. Think about that. But those NGOs are also giving it away to these stupid protests. They're paying for buses and hotels and salaries even for people to go out and throw stuff and scream at ICE agents to give the perception that the country is mad about enforcing immigration laws, which we're not at large. So just to recap, you pay taxes to the government that gives it to unaccountable liberal-run organizations that give it to illegals and anti-ICE protesters who take tons of welfare and housing benefits and then replace our labor workforce, and then they send a lot of that money back to their home countries, not to benefit America in any way, shape, or form. Basically, the reason you go to work for the first few months of the year, as you can see by that chart, for free, is to pay in part for all of this support for illegals that will never pay you back and doesn't benefit you in any way, shape, or form. Oh, by the way, libs want to give these illegals the right to vote, too. But if you want these people out of this country because you're tired of that and your tax dollars going to that kind of stuff, you're apparently a Nazi. And the same money being funneled through Act Blue and these NGOs are paying people like this to dox ICE agents.
I'll kill your whole family! Your whole family's dead! Come on! Children, your wife, all dead! Put it! My boy! I have your face, mother! You're dead! Dead!
And he went on to threaten his family, tell him he's going to kill his family. I mean, that guy seems super stable, and tax money funneled away to NGOs make their way down to protesters and protests just like that. Sometimes to fund paid protesters that are unemployable, I don't know, bagging groceries, but apparently do quite well in agitating. And a few Democrat states are even passing laws for them to take away the ability for ICE agents to wear masks. I tell you what, you arrest that guy who just threatened that ICE agent's, the federal agent's family for attempted murder, maybe then we talk about taking the masks off the ICE agents. How about a bill that protects federal agents that if someone comes on their property nationwide, they have castle doctrine and are legally allowed to shoot them on sight? Don't trespass on an ICE agent's property because they ain't feeling too protected right now. Because one of them was just arrested today in Texas for an official action that took place in Minnesota. The agent was apparently arrested and charged with 4 counts of second-degree assault in connection with his duties. Those duties were earlier this month, too. And it appears right now that DHS worked with them to let this happen. I don't understand how that's the case. I can't wait till Mark Wayne Mullen finds out about this. What about the supremacy clause? How can a state government arrest a federal agent for doing his job? You know what this is going to do to recruiting, which, by the way, is exactly what the left wants. You got to protect these guys, or they're going to be like the New York City cops where they're hesitant to arrest people because they're worried about getting sued. You saw that with the mob of people hitting cops with ice balls. That's going to happen on a federal level, and then Trump's not going to be able to deport anyone anymore because nobody will want to do anything because they're afraid of getting arrested. Former IFBB pro bodybuilder entrepreneur Seth Feroce and retired Green Beret and author of The Man Book, Nick Freitas. All right, so Nick, I look at this, throw out the politics on this for a second. The people who are protecting us are having their families threatened.
Oh, yeah, no, it's absolutely absurd. And the fact that our tax dollars are going to fund the organizations that are threatening the family members of ICE agents should infuriate all of us. I am tired of the family members of law enforcement agents who are doing their constitutional duties having to live in fear. I want the people who are threatening them to live in fear. And by the way, to all the squishy Republicans in the middle that look at some of the actions that are going right now, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I support defending our border and I support deportations, but I didn't know it would look like this. Please, for the love of God, wake up. The left turns up the temperature on purpose in order to convince you to shackle the very men and women who are going out there trying to enforce the law. So it's about time we wake up to this tactic and we don't let them get away with it anymore.
You know, Seth, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this is I caught a video that you put out about raising kids. And it really hit me because, I'm kind of one of the, in the same vein as that. But as somebody who is clearly raising kids properly, what happened to these kids to go out and scream in a federal officer's face? Never in my wildest dreams would I have done that in my upbringing.
I agree, because it seems just chaos. That's all that's being pushed and over. And in today's society, not having any type of stern moral upbringing is making this type of behavior polarized and attractive and exciting. And it's like, no, you're not. You're breaking down the moral fabric of what made this country great. Mm-hmm. And watching it happen, it creates unrest and chaos. And then it trickles into your home, because whenever you see this on social media over and over again, it creates these indifferent feelings about it. And a lot of the time it's chaos, and it wreaks havoc on these young people that watch it on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually the biggest thing is the young people see this and they're like, oh, that's acceptable, and it just perpetuates itself. But, you know, Nick, we go through this stuff, and I can't help, like, look, I've had 6 kids break into my house, and I got to deal with it. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I was fine with it, but, you know, it's a real problem that these people are just so emboldened by this to just do whatever they want.
Well, have you ever noticed that they don't do it in rural areas? There was a moment there during the height of the BLM riots when Antifa was saying, we got to stop burning down and looting our own cities. We need to go into the countryside. And I'll tell you what, my constituents were like, thank God. We've trained all of our lives for this. This is excellent. But they won't do it. And the reason why they do it in the cities that they do is because you have progressive mayors, progressive police chiefs, progressive district attorneys, attorney generals, governors who refuse to prosecute them. And so they continue to loot, burn down, and murder within liberal cities because they permit it, right? The moment you try this crap in a rural area, you better hope the sheriff's department gets there first. And that's the difference. We don't have to live this way. Blue cities choose to live this way.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing I always say. It's like you bring that stuff to anywhere in Appalachia, when the Hills start singing country roads, those guys will turn around and march right back to their blue cities. But Seth, let's be serious here. We've also gotten incredibly soft as a society, to exactly what Nick was saying, which is that, like, we do this because they've been allowed to do this. Like, I'm not an advocate for bullying, but it had its merits. I'm not, like, these kids clearly never got hit in the face with a dodgeball. I mean, it maybe let the kids fight on the, you know, in the parking lot now, and we might not have these crazy people anymore.
I agree, because I'm in the position I'm in. It's funny you bring that up, because whenever I was 12, 13 years old, I was a bit huskier.
I was short for my weight too.
Yeah, I was a little thick, and my nickname was Chubbs. And from that, like, everybody in the neighborhood called me that. And from that, I took that as this feeling I didn't know what to do with. And then I was like, I'm going to start working out, lifting weights. I wanted to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger and do all this crazy stuff like commando, carrying the log.
Yeah.
So from that, I became a professional bodybuilder. So from that bullying, if you want to call it that, I ended up using that as fuel for what I have today, which is pretty incredible. And today, like, you have to harden up, because the world is not an easy place to be in. It takes tenacity, it takes ambition. And if you don't teach that at a young age, I don't believe it just comes about one day out of nowhere.
Yeah, but Nick, we've become a society where people would rather tear things down than build things.
Well, I think certain people would. Look, the bottom line is, I think all of it, I think God created men to, yes, we want to be strong, we want to be competent. And yes, to some degree, there's a propensity or a capacity for violence there. That's not bad. That's not toxic. The question is what is it in service to? Right. So the way I raised my son, the way my father raised me, was this idea that these instincts that God has given you, you need to make sure that you get them under control. You train them for a noble purpose. You should be the sort of man that is dangerous for your family, never toward your family.
Yes.
And when you actually raise men up with this idea of, I'm going to develop these God-given skill sets to protecting my wife, my children, my community, my country, you get good results. And when you don't, you get things like this.
Yeah. I mean, look, you threaten my family, you're going home in a bag, period, full stop. Seth, Nick, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, tonight's our final show for the month of May, and you know what's around the corner? You're going to have to endure it. Here comes Pride Month. Anyone else so sick of this garbage? I got my take on the trans movement later in the show. But first, President Trump meeting with his team today to make a final determination on Iran lifting our naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Didn't I tell you, guys? He's going to get this figured out. We got Ben Ferguson sounding off on that in a second.
Donald Trump's second presidency is changing America. Now you need to watch Rob Schmitt tonight on President Trump's next big move. Then tune into Rob Finnerty taking on Trump's critics. President Trump says he watches Newsmax. You should too. Download our Newsmax app to watch us anytime, anywhere. Millions are making the switch to Newsmax. Be one.
Immunoline 50 may be the best food supplement in the world because it contains 70 plant minerals and 80 other nutrients. The 3 videos on our website tell you how this product and 7 times more minerals can improve your health.
Another lost summer scrolling and swiping? Turns out the fix is right here. Create new lifetime memories from the comfort of your backyard. No passports, no reservations. Latham's premium handcrafted pools can be installed in weeks. Our pools won't stain or crack and never require costly resurfacing. And with our crystal finish, you can bring your favorite exotic watercolor and shimmer right to your own backyard. Visit LathamPool.com now. Latham is a proud sponsor of USA Artistic Swimming.
You didn't just buy your land, you earned it. And for more than 30 years in this country, Mahindra tractors have earned something too. The trust of landowners who know what real toughness looks like. With powerful engines that work harder, heavy steel builds that last longer, and intuitive controls that are easier to use. Mahindras are made for the folks who earned them. Mahindra, outworking the field. Get 0% for 84 months and $2,000 cash back on the 1100 and 2100 series.
Immunoline 50 may be the best food supplement in the world because it contains 70 plant minerals and 80 other nutrients. The 3 videos on our website tell you how this product and 7 times more minerals can improve your health.
All right, President Trump meeting with his team today to make a final determination on an Iran deal. He also lifted the naval blockade on the Strait of Hormuz this morning, posting on Truth Social, Iran must agree that they will never have a nuclear weapon or bomb. The Hormuz Strait must be open immediately. No tolls for unrestricted shipping traffic in both directions. Ships caught in the Strait of Hormuz due to our amazing and unprecedented naval blockade will now be lifted. May start the process of heading home. Say hello to your wives, husbands, parents, and families. From me, your favorite president. I love that guy. I told you our favorite president would get this sorted out. Ben Ferguson, host of the Ben Ferguson Show. Sir, the left is trying to say, well, he ran away from this. It's like, guys, what do you want him to do?
Yeah. No, look, this is a president that understood a couple of different things. One, that you cannot allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. And two, he's not going to be put on the clock to get this done. He also is a guy that understands how to negotiate. And he's made it clear day in and day out. You're not going to have nuclear weapons. And oh, by the way, you can't charge tolls and control the Strait of Hormuz. We're not going to allow you to have that power. He also said the same thing to Oman and said, by the way, if they don't understand what I'm saying, the guy next to you will blow you up. Like, he is so transparent in what he says he's going to do. Every American should appreciate it, but it's also back to the issue of national security. The president did the opposite of what every other administration said we needed to do. Obama, Clinton, Hillary, I mean, even Jill Biden and Joe Biden, both of them agreed. We don't know who was running the White House all the time, but we do know they both agreed on this. And that was they couldn't get nuclear weapons. So all he's doing is using their foreign policy, but he has the cojones to actually do it.
Yeah, with teeth. And like to the people you're talking about, like Seth Moulton, Congressman Seth Moulton on CNN last night, saying that Trump lost this war and negotiations are blah, 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 blah. Look at this. Listen to this.
This is not a deal. It's a surrender document. And Trump, who started this war with no plan to win it, no plan to end it, and demanded Iran's unconditional surrender, now seems to be negotiating America's unconditional surrender to Iran. This is a loss across the board. He's having a hope and a prayer that he might get some semblance of the nuclear deal that Obama handed to him.
That they weren't adhering to, and we know that because they actually have the nuclear dust now that they built while the JCPOA was in place.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if that guy is registered as a foreign lobbyist for Iran yet, because I feel like he should have to at this point. This is the problem with the Democratic Party. when the president gets this deal done and the world is safer, right? And we're doing this not just for our interest, but for the rest of the world.
Yep.
And then gas prices come down. He will find some other moonbat thing to complain about. But at some point, you're not a serious person anymore. When you undermine American troops, when you undermine the killing of the top 4 or 5 different levels of the Iranian regime, when you undermine national security on a nuclear scale, like at this point, who really does take you seriously? This is why I think the Democratic Party is floundering. This is why I think they're going to have a tough midterm, by the way.
Yeah, and also Seth Moulton needs like TRT or something because he's quite feminine. The other thing, Trump putting on, obviously Truth Social after the judge was like, hey, the Trump Center, Kennedy Center, you gotta rip your name off of it and all that. He posted on Truth, he said, based on the fact that the radical left Democrats care more about opposing your favorite president, me, than saving a dying performing arts center, we're going to be working with Congress to transfer this failing institution back to them so they can make a determination as to what to do with it. It seems rational to me.
Yeah, look, I'm fine with it. The president tries to make things better than they were when he got there. The Kennedy Center had, decades of deferred maintenance, not years, decades of deferred maintenance. It was a disaster. He understood that. He said, let's fix it. Let's make it better. But you got to understand, Trump derangement syndrome is orange man bad. Anything he touches is bad. Anything his name on is bad. And even if it gets better, right? He could literally cure cancer. And they would say, how dare you take cancer away from people that want to get cancer, right?
Yeah, you're contributing to overpopulation. But I mean, look, all of D.C. is cleaner. The fountain works for the first time in like 20 years in front of Union Station. So let's come back home to this Freedom 250 lineup. Okay, this lineup was released, okay? I get it. They're putting some throwbacks, Vanilla Ice and a couple other people, but like all these people now are dropping out. Yeah. And they're saying, well, it's partisan or I'm worried about death threats. It's like, this is America's 250th birthday. Leave all your BS at home and just go play music.
Yeah, I think this is part of the Democratic, insanity where they hate this country so much and what it is, and they refuse to celebrate 250 years of it. They'll celebrate putting LGBTQ plus lights on the White House, right, for Pride Month. Oh, yeah. That is a celebration they'll get behind when Democrats are in charge and they do that. But if you celebrate America, which should be nonpartisan, it should be everyone coming together. You shouldn't have to have a Republican side of the street for the parade and a Democratic side of the street for a parade. Politics should not matter if you have pride in the United States of America. And I'll say this. For anybody watching in Nashville right now that's in the country music industry, like this is a big opportunity for you to expand your audience. Like I hope country music stars will show up for this and like go, agents should be burning up the phones going, hey, we would love to celebrate America. That doesn't have to be partisan. And Americans that love this country will support you and remember it forever. Yeah. And the people that don't show up, I'm sorry, you deserve to get what the Dixie Chicks got, right? Now they're the ugly chicks or whatever they are, like that you deserve. That was me being kind, by the way. I knew what you were thinking when I said that. But like, if you want to be PC like that, like I'm just saying, I'm going to remember it forever.
Yeah, well, Ben Ferguson, always a pleasure, my man.
Good to see you.
I know you'll be celebrating. Coming up, a crazy new rent report showing prices for one-bedroom apartments in major cities are surging, but one neighborhood figured out how to make it cheaper. Might shock you. Who? Next.
He could tell me everything about my life, so he was looking for me for a long time.
Children are being manipulated and blackmailed online. The results can be deadly. Human trafficking is happening right here in America. Watch Stolen Lives, America's human trafficking crisis.
Healthy aging support starts here with the innovative nitric oxide science pioneered by Human, supporting your body from the heart out through circulation, blood flow, blood pressure, and energy. Results you can feel, science you can trust. Get started today at human.com.
I'm former Mets manager Terry Collins. The Tunnel Towers Foundation is very important to me, and I look for ways to try to support them any way I can. If a first responder is killed in the line of duty, T2T will pay off the mortgage for their family. That's just one of the ways T2T makes a difference. You can support their cause as well by donating $11 a month. Go to T2T.org, let's go Mets, and let's help Tunnel Towers.
Doctors say having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care and pharmacy at home. Let me bring in Dr. McCullough to explain more.
Most people know when they're getting sick, but waiting to see a doctor is often too late.
So the key is having medicines before you need them.
Yes, and it includes doctor-prescribed medicines to treat common and serious issues like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, antibiotics, antivirals for flu, pneumonia, strep, ear and sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
So it is like having an urgent care at home.
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications and hospitalizations.
How do you know what to take?
Just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Great advice. I understand ordering is fast online, and we've put the website and $45 off code on the screen. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
Honey, Mortgage Money 6 says we should keep renting.
Mortgage Money 6?
Reba says more realtor agents recommend Realtor.com. They track every market so you know when to make your move.
He also says that Bigfoot... Got it.
Make it real with Realtor.com.
Sir, he's here to see you.
So, are you ready to join forces? PCMac provides complete protection for your computer and smartphone against malware and ransomware, and it's 100% American-made and supported security.
Today, Cyberman and his unknown partner delivered a massive victory, protecting homes, businesses, and federal devices from ransomware.
Get protected now at PCMatic.com.
250 years ago, a nation was forged by grit, by courage, by freedom. Today, we raise a glass to that same spirit. 4547 Straight Bourbon Whiskey, the 250th Anniversary Edition. Bold, independent, unmistakably American. Toast to independence this year. Built by patriots, for patriots. Order yours today.
The grind catches up with everyone, even me. That's why I trust Cunol Ultra High Absorption Turmeric to support my joint health. It's the #1 doctor-recommended form of turmeric that helps you keep doing the things you love at every age. Cunol, the brand I trust.
As crazy new study on rent just dropped from the Zumper National Rent Report. Never heard of it, but apparently somebody has. New York City has reached an all-time high for one-bedroom rent, climbing 3.1% month over month to $4,680. But goes New York, so goes the rest of the nation. San Francisco keeps breaking their own records. One bedroom there is hitting $4,000 for the first time in the city's history, now leading the nation in annual rent growth at over 21%. There's a bunch of cities like this. But you know what was really shocking here from this study is that right across the Hudson River from New York, New Jersey, Jersey City, rent for a one-bedroom apartment actually dropped as its neighbor rises. Jersey City rent dropping 4.7% month over month and 2.1% year over year. Maybe because Mamdani keeps adding more rules and rent controls and things like that. He's reducing supply and increasing prices. And Jersey is like, hey, let's grab some of these people. Let's reduce our burden on landowners. Weird. Joe Pags, host of the Joe Pags Show. Sir, this study to me, it's like if you make things more expensive and then charge people more taxes, why would they stay?
First of all, what is the Zumper report? I'm with you on that. I never heard about it before. But having said that, I believe that he's using the same playbook as Chavez did and Maduro did in Venezuela. Let's make it so expensive that you can't afford to live, that you're going to beg the government to take over all the housing. You're going to beg us to rent you something and make the rent lower as long as you just agree with every socialist or communist thing we want to do. I feel bad for Jersey City because people are now going to be flocking to Jersey City to go get the cheaper rent. But I really do think this is part of the plan, Carl. This isn't by accident. If we make everything so expensive that you can't afford it, you're either going to leave, and he wants the billionaires to leave for some reason, or if you have to stay here, you need to come to Daddy Mamdani and ask for rent and ask for internet and ask for heat and ask for food. That's the way it turned out in the Soviet Union when they were all waiting in line for a loaf of bread and some toilet paper. That's what we're heading toward in New York.
But the other thing is, anybody who's ever rented an apartment in one of these big cities knows about roommates and flex walls, where these temporary things that they put up. Most of these places now in New York and San Francisco and Boston, they're banning these flex walls from being put up. So if you're like, 23, 24 years old, first job in one of these big cities anywhere, you now can't put up one of these walls because they don't want 2 or 3 tenants living in what was meant to be a one bedroom. Now young people just aren't going to live in the city and the nightlife's going to die.
And think about it. The power and control goes even further. How are they going to enforce that? I have no idea, unless now the city has access to your apartment to make sure you're not breaking that new law. And again, $2,300 a month is a whole lot better than $4,600 a month. It's obvious that you can share a one bedroom with somebody else. Somebody gets the one part with the kitchen, the living room. The other person gets the bedroom.
Right.
But Mamdani is now going to have full access, Carl. This is about controlling everything and begging the king for a little something. Give us a morsel, please. This isn't going to fly. New Yorkers, they're right now, I believe, at critical mass, like they were when they elected Rudy Giuliani. They held their nose and said, okay, we got to go Republican because we can't possibly deal with these Democrats. This guy is way far left of a Democrat.
Yeah, and now you've got Central Park being taken over by people praying to Mecca or whatever they do. All right, here's another messed up one. Karen Bass over in L.A. She's now claiming, this is like, I really hope Spencer Pratt wins. It's a long shot, but it's not impossible with stuff like this. She's saying that L.A. is safer than it's been since the 1950s. Watch this.
Reality is our streets are safer than they've been since, what, the 1950s?
Yeah, and you know, gang homicide is down. And by the way, most of the homicides are gang-related, is down to 1960 levels.
It's just not true.
Carl, it's not true. And I guess it's safe if you're okay with people shoving hypodermic needles in their arms, laying in the streets, or doing something to themselves that would be seen as disgusting for a family to walk by in Venice Beach. You know, at the end of the day, you've got somebody who is never going to be able to get away from this one thing she did. She was in Ghana when her city was burning to the ground. And instead of jumping on the next plane and coming back from Ghana, for God's sakes, because she was there on a Biden trip, he asked me to go to Ghana. Instead of coming back and caring about her community, she ignored it and let the city burn and then acted like she didn't really realize that it was happening. This woman is crazy, but if she's getting support from people like Samuel L. Jackson, the politician mind that he is, I think that Spencer Pratt has a better chance than we might have even expected.
Well, Joe, obviously, she understands the people. That's what Samuel Jackson.
The people of Ghana, Carl, the people of Ghana. Yeah, it's not the people of L.A. And thank God gang homicide is down. She didn't talk about all the homicide.
Well, because all their turf burnt up in the fire. That's why there's no violence over there.
Exactly right. You nailed it.
Okay, speaking of this failed mayor, imagine flexing an endorsement from Jane Fonda. Karen Bass actually put this in writing. Angelinos need a leader willing to stand up and speak out. Jane has never been afraid to do that either. I'm sorry, Hanoi Jane, who ratted on our POWs that were then beaten to death? I'm sorry, what?
I can't imagine living in Los Angeles and saying, oh, my God, I was going to go with Spencer Pratt, but Jane Fonda's on the side of Bass? I'm in. And as I said, Samuel L. Jackson, I think a bunch of other actors and doofuses are lining up to say Karen Bass is great. She's great as she leaves the city. They've got to get her out. I pray that something good happens for that city. It's a beautiful place if you get the right leadership.
Right. No, California's gorgeous. They just wrecked it with Democrat policies. Joe Pags, sir, have a great weekend.
My man, have a great weekend. Thanks.
All right, coming up, a dating site reserved for the unvaccinated. Sounds great, but not to one venue in Denver. And now a legal firestorm has started. All that and more. Culture Clash.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
This little light of mine has been dark for quite some time. Then I let in the light to help see more of the light inside of me.
I needed more from my antidepressant, so my doctor added Caplyta, proven to provide greater relief from depression symptoms than an antidepressant alone, building on my progress without starting over. Weight gain and reported sexual side effects were not common.
Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of death or stroke. Caplyta is not approved for dementia-related psychosis. Call your doctor about new or sudden mood changes, behaviors, or suicidal thoughts right away. Antidepressants may increase these risks. Report fever, confusion, stiff muscles, which may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may be permanent. High cholesterol and weight gain may occur, as can high blood sugar, which may be fatal. Common side effects are sleepiness, dizziness, nausea, dry mouth, feeling tired, and diarrhea. These aren't all the side effects.
Ask your doctor about Caplyta.
Help see more of the light inside of me.
We can all agree, steak is for dads. Grill dads, charcoal dads, tongue-snapping dads, united by their love of steak. His perfect gift is waiting, plus 8 free burgers at omahasteaks.com.
You're told to optimize, to hack. There's always a promise of a better you. But what if you were never meant to be fixed? Your biology knows how to thrive. It just needs a reminder. Armor Colostrum reawakens that brilliance. 400 nutrients, 4 seconds, 1 daily revival. This time, remember what you're made of.
When curiosity strikes about the everyday lives of your family, we're here with answers only your ancestors can provide. See their stories at Ancestry.
Ever wished you could brew your own beer, but figured it was too complicated, too messy, too much effort? Well, now you can. Meet Pinter, the home beer system everyone's talking about. Fresh beer, brewed and tapped by you. No fuss, no guesswork, just brew, chill, tap, done. You can craft 12 pints with every brew. Crisp lager, juicy and hoppy IPAs, smooth stouts, plus brew beers from top craft breweries you know and love. From the first tap to the last toast, hosting just got an upgrade. Nothing beats sharing your own fresh beer with friends. You don't need a garage brewery. You don't need a chemistry set. You just need a Pinter. Right now, get your Pinter free when you join our flexible beer plan. Choose your beers, brew fresh at home, and tap into the world's best beer experience. Free Pinter. Freshly brewed beer. Zero fuss. Go to pinter.com/spring to claim your offer today.
Life with ear ringing sounded like a constant train whistle I couldn't escape. Then I started taking lipoflavonoid. With 60 years of clinical experience, it's the #1 doctor-recommended brand for ear ringing. And now I'm finally free. Take back control with lipoflavonoid.
All right, we're going to do Culture Clash a little different tonight, focusing on the culture of health. Unjected. It's a dating app for unvaccinated people. Plus, it's a planned dating event also they were having in Denver at Recess Beer Garden, specifically geared towards people who are not vaccinated against COVID, don't have the COVID vax, because that was the bad one. That's why I said no. But the beer garden abruptly canceled the meetup, saying it had learned of the event through social media, saying that they went on a lot, but saying due to escalating hostility and safety concerns about not being vaxxed, right, surrounding this situation and the lack of compliance from the event organizers, this advertised event will not take place at Recess Beer Garden. The safety and well-being of our staff and guests will always come first. The safety and I bet that place made their people get vaxxed. Undeterred, Unjected found a new venue to hold their event in Denver, the Grizzly Rose, which will be held tonight. And it doesn't end there. Unjected is now filing a lawsuit against the Recess Beer Garden for medical discrimination. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, Crunchies. Claiming that Recess acted on pressures of third parties who objected to the unvaccinated status of the unjected community, leading to Recess posting a false and defamatory statement causing financial harm to Unjected. Look, restaurants banned me for not being vaccinated, but they don't respect anyone's desire to have an event banning people who have been vaccinated. That could go both ways. The woman behind the story, Shelby Hosana, the founder and CEO of Unjected, and one of the country's leading wellness experts, founder of 1% Life, Adam Lamb. Okay, Shelby, I love this. Like, I was one of the few people in Manhattan that was like, nope, double barrel, middle finger, not doing this. Come make me.
That is great to hear. And, you know, there's so many more people just like that. There's actually millions of us out there that stood to their conviction and decided that bodily autonomy and the freedom to choose was absolutely their right.
Yeah. Adam, but look, you're in the tip of the spear on the wellness industry. People come to you all the time, be like, how can I make my life better? One of the big things now is people are like, hey, we did everything wrong during COVID. Can you help me undo some of this stuff? How do I get back in shape? How do I fix it? Like, this is a big thing in your industry.
Yeah, you know, and to the point, having medical freedom, right? It's defined a lot of ways. Hey, I don't want to have the thing that you may think I want. And there may be some other things that I am interested that someone might say, well, that's not approved, or or the FDA didn't clear it. I'm like, well, I'm not sure that I'm okay with all the things that they cleared. And there's a lot of people that we've worked with over the last few years that have had things of long COVID as like a term or something like that have really had to go way outside of the box in the healthcare space, and thank God for good medical professionals that have done research and have found other alternatives to help reverse some of these effects of things. And it's super important that we have medical freedom in our bodies and choose what we want to put in them ourselves as Americans. This is what we deserve and should have.
Yeah, but Shelby, to my earlier point was like, we were asked to show proof of a vaccine to get a cheeseburger. Like, I had places that I would literally order my meal from on the interweb and then go to pick it up, and they'd ask my Vax card before I picked it up, which it didn't have. So they would just charge me but not give me my meal. And you want to have something that's, hey, we're kindly asking only unvaccinated people because we want to have people meet other unvaccinated people so when they have children, they don't have the mRNA in their system.
Absolutely. And, you know, you think in 2026, after so much science has actually come out and the evidence is clear that the mRNA injections have absolutely maimed and killed millions of people, that, you know, in 2026, it shouldn't be an issue that unvaccinated people get together and meet in a public space, let alone an outdoor patio in fresh air. And these people are still quite literally so full of fear that they looked at our group as medically dangerous or infectious just because we made a decision not to get an experimental injection put in our body. And really, it's so the opposite when really our group is actually some of the most healthy, the most, you know, intelligent and tuned with the highest convictions. And, you know, we also believe that vaccination goes against a lot of our religious beliefs as well. So Recess canceling our group based on the fact that we are an unvaccinated group. Of course, they tried to skate around that with a really false narrative that they published. But when it came down to it, they were getting verbally assaulted by pro-vaccination people. I mean, they were going to hold a protest outside the restaurant.
Stupid.
People said that they were going to burn down the building. That's how they actually feel about unvaccinated people.
Yeah.
They would rather burn us down in a building. And that's because the government pitted us together in 2020 and 2021. And now we're facing the repercussions of that all these years later.
Yeah, but Adam, you know, I got about 30 seconds here for this. People are increasingly, young people too, are increasingly finding, let's go to the gym together for social life, not the bar.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it. Even myself, I'm not a go to the bar guy at this age, and most of my friends have been made at the gym. And also, I think we want to find, similar to what Shelby's sharing, is I want to find people that value their health, people that have, you know, we're like-minded, we value those things. Most of my friends, they go to the gym, they're healthy. We're talking about how we can get healthier. We're talking about our HRV. We're talking about all these things. Where maybe other people that are worried about vaccinated, they're worried about all the fear-mongering stuff that the news is.
Yeah, well, I'm mostly going to the gym to complain to my friends about what hurts and what. Yeah. But anyway, Shelby, Adam, we appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks, we got some breaking news. President Trump has just signed an executive order realigning U.S. core childhood vaccine recommendations with best practices from peer-developed countries. He actually just watched that segment and then decided to do this. He said in it, Trump acknowledges that the U.S. currently recommends more childhood vaccines than any peer nation and that he is changing policy to align our childhood vaccination schedule to and with scientific evidence that they didn't have during COVID and those peer countries. We'll be following this story real closely, and we'll tell you all about it. All right, coming up, Democrats fight tooth and nail for the LGBTQ LMNOP people, while these alphabet people are just trying to mutilate their kids and our kids. I have enough with this. Details next.
It's me, Ricky. You grew up with me. I am using Fatty 15 to get me to feel and look the best I've ever felt at my age. The C15 nutrient has been known to strengthen our cells and slow the aging process at a cellular level. I urge you to try Fatty 15.
If you still have bad breath by lunchtime, your mouthwash isn't working. Smart Mouth is the only mouthwash that prevents bad breath for 24 hours. This is the only mouthwash I recommend. Upgrade your mouthwash to Smart Mouth today and never have bad breath again.
Another lost summer scrolling and swiping? Another lost spring break? Turns out the fix is right here. Create new lifetime memories from the comfort of your backyard. No passports, no reservations. Latham's premium handcrafted pools are ultra durable for any climate. Can be installed in weeks, not months. and have hundreds of designs, sizes, and colors to choose from. For 70 years, Latham Pool has remained the gold standard in bringing backyard dreams to life. Our pools are easy to care for, won't stain or crack, and never require costly resurfacing. And with flexible financing options, your dream is within reach. And with our crystal finish, you can bring your favorite exotic watercolor and shimmer right to your own backyard. It's never too early to start planning for a lifetime of memories. Visit LathamPool.com now. Latham is a proud sponsor of USA Artistic Swimming.
My earwax buildup was frustrating. Then I tried new Lipo Earwax Cleanser. The revolutionary formula dissolves earwax 5 times faster than the leading brand and helps prevent future buildup. Feel the difference with new Lipo Earwax Cleanser.
It's 2 a.m., your fever spiked and you're miserable. Here's your options.
Urgent care, closed. ER, slammed, and you'll spend hundreds of thousands in both. Telehealth, yeah, but the pharmacies are closed.
That's the reason why we keep emergency medical kits at home.
It has doctor-prescribed medication like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other antibiotics and antivirals. You can treat flu, pneumonia, strep, sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
Because if you're sick in at night, traveling or stranded, you don't want options.
You want what is inside this kit. No waiting, no pharmacy, and no copays.
Just schedule a quick telehealth call.
And that's how you feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
Every family should have this kit, and here's how to order yours.
Order online in minutes and use the promo code to save $45. Your doctor-prescribed kit ships fast to your door, packed with medications to treat over 30 conditions. So when something hits, you're ready. And a wellness company telehealth doctor is always there if you need guidance.
Stop. Check this out. Our most advanced performance frame, Talon, is out. It's a bestseller. We just got it back in stock, and I want to show you a little bit about it. These come with our signature lost and broken protection, and you can try them risk-free for 30 days. Check them out at ShadyRays.com.
I gotta get some of this stuff off my chest about this trans thing before Gay Pride Month, folks. We have a guy, ironically named Scott Wiener, who is very upset that so many trans and LGBTQ LMNOP people are on the sex offender list, right?
We also know that LGBTQ people have been massively and disproportionately targeted and subjected to being slammed onto the sex offender registry. That's the whole history of the sex offender registry.
Well, sorry, I gotta point out the obvious, but have they tried not committing sex crimes? Now, look, he is correct. Per capita, according to the randomized study that we're seeing here, when they selected, again, 964 random registered sex offenders, 20% of the registered sex offenders happen to be members of the LGBTQ community. This is data. This is not me saying this. These are the numbers. People in the alphabet community, according to this study, are about 4 times more likely to be on the sex offender list for committing a sex offense. But not because they were victims, but because they committed the problem. They committed the crime. And this isn't shocking for anybody with a brain. 4 times the sex crimes. We actually don't have a lot of data on this, though, because studies that show what I'm talking about, they just get squashed because of all the woke scientists out there. So they don't actually release them. But we do also have a lot of data from prison systems in other countries, which is bizarre to me because you would think that a woke country like the UK wouldn't even allow this study to be done, but here they are. The UK prison system was surveyed, and it showed that 50 to 60% of trans women, dudes, had sex offense convictions compared to 16% of not alphabet prisoners, which mirrors the data of that other study, which is about 4 times higher comparatively than the other study found. But also in Canada, they had 31% of the trans inmates versus only 17% for dudes and 0% for women. You average those two together, that's 8.5 versus 32%, and guess what you get? The same number, about 4 times. Shocker, that's someone, I don't know, mentally unstable enough to want to chop parts off of their own body to play a different gender would commit a sexual offense, right? Yeah, this is the first community to scream victim, opening their own school because they claim that they're a bullied community. Can't wait to see the stats on this one. Also, just throwing this out there, check into the teachers that volunteer to work with the LGBTQ kids. I'm just saying. What's crazy is the leftists who prop this stuff up admit this community is a problem openly themselves. Quote, Seattle LGBTQ Commission, spelled wrong, urges city to declare, also spelled wrong, emergency as more queer and trans people move to area. By the way, this article has been up on the local news site for 7 days with no corrections to the misspellings you see there. Its author boasts an award-winning reporter for Cairo 7. Anyway, they say, quote, migration is reportedly straining local community organizations that provide essential services. Hey, what services, Seattle? Go on. The commission reports that community organizations are experiencing unprecedented demand for housing, medical, and other services while simultaneously facing decreased donations. And we can make an educated guess what those medical services are. Plenty of data, again, folks, not me saying it, on the medical needs of the LGBTQ community out there. Feel free to go do the research on your own. What's weird is that they never declared a medical emergency last year when tax-paying residents couldn't get basic physicals because the libs ran all the doctors out of town with regulations. No, that wasn't an emergency. Look, the bottom line is this is why most people like me and most parents across the political spectrum, not just on the right, are fighting against all this queer stuff in our schools. A queer prom for children? First, kids don't know they're queer in 6th grade, as this thing boasts. But they also don't have a prom when they're that young. They do for their 12th grade, so just stop it. But people like Low T Tallarico trying to make this a mainstream thing.
Something that you love that's not family or friends.
I love, I'm just saying this because it's on my mind, the trans children.
Okay. It's just real weird that that was on the top of his mind. This is why the numbers have increased, though, by the way, of people identifying as trans. Nature versus nurture. Men becoming less manly. Every celebrity has like a random trans kid or 3 or 5 or whatever. Oh, my kids are trans because they're teaching it to their kids. Kids don't know any better. Look, I say, folks, it is okay to reject this stuff and not like it and be appalled by it even when you got drag queens twerking in 6-year-old kids' faces. When they push it on you, you don't have to accept it. You can say no. They're free to do or pretend or whatever they want in their own home and stuff like that. But they are not free to tell people like me that I have to accept it, or especially not free to tell me that I have to celebrate it. That is not what America is about. All right, before we go, the people of LA are finally fed up with the homeless crisis, and what they organized outside of mayoral candidate Neetha Raman, like the noodles, home, has her shocked and hopefully rethinking her entire life. Next.
Closed captioning by America Tax Group. Stop IRS and state collections. Free consultation. Call now.
America Tax Group is the nation's leading tax firm that has helped millions of taxpayers resolve penalties, remove liens, and stop wage garnishments. If you're dealing with IRS or state tax issues, don't wait. Call now.
People always ask, why Patriot Gold Group? With over 10,000 clients to date and over $1 billion in transactions, not a single complaint on the Better Business Bureau. Consumer Affairs top rated for 9 years in a row. Over 2,000 5-star reviews. The only company nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner. Home of the no fee for life IRA. Gold is up 80% in the last 28 months, 275% since Lehman Brothers collapsed. We are patriots protecting patriots. Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 888-528-4290 before it's too late. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer 9 years in a row. Call now, 888-528-4290.
Think you need a new roof? Think again and save thousands. We'll help you put off the high cost of a roof replacement for at least 5 years.
Or 10.
Or sometimes even 15.
We're America's most trusted roofer because we always try to save your roof rather than replace it.
We'll restore your roof for a fraction of the cost of a new one. But don't wait. If your roof loses too much protective coating, it's too late. Call now or scan the code and we'll give you an assessment of your roof for free.
My
My friends, I come to you today on behalf of the Jewish people in Ukraine whose lives have been completely destroyed. Family and loved ones brutally killed. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews inside of Ukraine, providing emergency food and supplies to tens of thousands of people. But the food crisis is growing for Jewish families and especially for the elderly.
I am shocked how many elderly people came here. They're afraid, and they realize now that there are more people than boxes.
For just $25, you can help rush an emergency food box to the elderly Jews in Ukraine. Many of them are hungry, frightened, and alone. Your gift helps provide critical food when it's needed most. Call or go online now.
The people of Ukraine are caught in the crosshairs of war. Many of these precious people are Holocaust survivors, elderly Jews who are sick and dying. They have no food, and we must reach them now before it's too late.
The world is in a war again. I am alone. I'm afraid of the bombs. I'm scared. I am old. There is no food.
Just $25 helps rush emergency food to elderly Jews in Ukraine who are in urgent need today. Please call, scan, or go online right now.
I will not starve. Thank you, good people.
We can be the hope to the Jewish people who are suffering in Ukraine. Your help is desperately needed now.
Democrats simply do not care about you unless it also affects them. Then they care about you because it affects them. The LA mayor candidate, Neetha Raman, like the noodles, suddenly cares about homelessness after a fed-up organization, because the city's a dump of homeless people, set up a staged homeless encampment outside of her multi-million-dollar mansion. Now, she's terrified that her children would see the fake homeless people. This is coming from the same person that said she couldn't care less about the homeless encampment set up in front of a children's school and daycares that are actually affecting people on a day-to-day basis.
I mean, it's like, I don't think a kid's going to be safer because a tent is 500 feet away from a school. You know, it's like, whatever.
Oh, so apparently it's fine if homeless encampments are 10 feet away from people's children, other people's children at school, but not when it's 10 feet away from your house and your children. Got it. Okay. I say give her the real experience. Get some real homeless people out there. Maybe throw a barbecue, put a couple bottles of liquor out there, have a barbecue and everything, and everybody will be fine. It'll be great. And then, Rob, she'll get to experience it all for herself, real.
I love that. I love that story. I can't believe how these people don't understand. They don't see it when they're saying these things. They don't understand. Nope. It's amazing. Carl, good to see you.
My man.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.